So talking on electronic identification and data collection. So when I spoke at Narracourt, it's possibly a slightly different audience with what they're wanting out of the day compared to what you want. So it's a fairly broad talk, and I'm going to go through some of the basics. So it's a bit of a revision for those that are already using EID and have heard this before, but I'm presuming there's those in the room that haven't. Can I just have a show of hands of those that are using electronic tags? So there's a few of you. Anyone thinking of using electronic tags? So a few more. Okay, so excellent. So lots of different applications on farms for usages. So within our business, obviously, Cousins Merino Service gives it away. We work with a lot of merino studs, but we also work across board as well with sheep and cattle. But a lot of the examples that I'm going to use are from the work we've done with some merino breeders, but the principles are exactly the same. So don't just think that if I'm putting up examples of something that it doesn't apply to you. You need to actually think how you could apply that to your own business with your own breeding objectives and your own production systems. So what are electronic tags? Really, they're not much. They're just a passive device. You don't need to really worry too much about the ins and outs of how they work, but really all they do is produce a 16-digit number. So no information is actually stored on that tag at all. And that's what some people get a little confused about, because initially there was a lot of talk about read-write tags and information being stored, and people got themselves a little confused with what the tag actually does. All the tag does is once a voltage is reached by with a handheld reader or a panel generator, it'll activate that electronic chip in the tag, and it just simply turns on that chip and it transmits that unique number to whatever reader you're using. So it's a pretty simple system. I've got examples of all the different types of tags down the back, and there's a lot on the market at the minute. All tag companies now produce EID tags that are NLIS compliant, so you don't have to use the NLIS compliant tags. But they're going to charge you the same price anyway. So there's that option there for you. So I've got a few of the different ones up there. You've got the All-Flex shear wells. At the top is the old style All-Flex tags, and down the bottom here's the old jumbo tags. I still have people using these, so if they're only collecting data just once off an animal, they're reusing those tags because they're a lot cheaper. But when we first started in this space with electronic tags, they were selling for $3.60 a tag. Generally speaking now, about $1.60, $1.50 to $1.60 a tag with GST is the price. So they've come down quite significantly. And if you're lucky enough to have a property in Victoria, then it's subsidised, of course, by the government, and they're quite a lot cheaper again. So why would we want to use it on farm? Variety of reasons, and like I said, everyone's reasons will be different. So it's a technology that facilitates individual animal management. So we're moving away from a mob-based measurement system, and we're looking at those individual animals. And it improves our data accuracy. So I don't know if you've been like me and been stuck in sheep yards trying to read sheep tags. It's always covered in grease. Heads are always down. It can be quite hard work when you're trying to track animals. So to actually be able to just read a tag without having to manually do it is quite good. It eliminates those tag reading errors, improves stock handling, less stress. So we're not having to lift sheep's heads up, get in the yards, and a reduction in time taken to collect the data. So if we can collect that information more accurately, with less stress, and in reduced time, it means we can collate it and recall it a lot easier, and therefore we're more likely to use it. And that's probably the main crux of it. There's no point collecting any information, really, if you're not actually going to apply it and use it on farm. So what is individual animal management? So So like I said before, it's just moving away from that mob-based principle. So we're selecting, managing and marketing of animals based on measured or individual production rather than on flock management principles. So it will allow us to maximise our returns from high-value animals and minimise those costs associated with those low-value animals. They all eat the same, so we really want to be concentrating that feed on those high-value animals and looking after those animals and identifying those animals that perhaps we can either manage differently or remove from our systems. It will allow us to exploit that variation that exists within the flocks, and I think that's sometimes something that we overlook. I think we think if we class our flocks quite well, they're going to be fairly consistent, but I'll put up some examples in a minute, but there is that variation with all those key profit drivers within the flock that we can take advantage of. New technologies exist to improve the productivity and profitability of your livestock enterprise, and you can look at how it allows you to look at how you can incorporate that within your management systems. So it's allowing you to take advantage of some of this new technology that's out there. So when we look at our profit drivers and we're measuring things within our system, this is my very poor bell graph. If you ever go to listen to consultants talk, they'll always want to show you a bell graph of something. So you're always going to have your average performers in the middle, and you're always going to have your best performers and your poor performers. So what individual animal management is going to allow you to do is identify either end of that and take advantage of it. And that's where significant gains could be made within your enterprise. So we're actually trying to shift that average, obviously, up towards that best performing way. So this is an example that the Sheep CRC put together quite a while ago now, but it just shows the variability within a merino flock. The pricing, this was done in 2006, so the pricing is, you can imagine what the current grid prices are for carcass and the wool market for fleece. So if we look at this one, they're saying the average of the flock was, fleece value was $54. The top 25% was $82, and the bottom 25 was $37. So there's quite a big variation that you could take advantage of, and if we applied today's pricing to that, it would look a lot more impressive as well. Carcass value is the same. Don't forget, when you're talking about that top 25 and bottom 25, so it's saying the average of that bottom 25 is 12. There's still going to be a variation within that too, so you're going to have some pretty poor performers there that you can take out of that system. This was just, I used some information that's a little bit more recent, so I think this is from about 4 years ago. Looking at some measurement we'd done for a client, and we looked at their micron, fleece weight and body weights, and you can see there is a difference between the top 25 and bottom 25% of 3.4 for micron, and in today's market there's not, the micron premiums aren't brilliant, but it just gives you that opportunity to measure and monitor where you're travelling. Fleece weights, the difference is 1.8 kilos between the top and bottom producers. So what's the wool market at the minute? It's having a lovely rise again, I saw the other day. So if you work on, what, $20 a kilo, I think it's about right. That sound about right? So at 1.8 kilos, that's actually quite a big difference between those animals, isn't it? Body weight 14.2, and I think that would speak for itself to the opportunities you can make by actually working with those figures to optimise your livestock production systems. You have people doing some quite exciting things with looking at measuring litter weight weaned, so they're actually looking to see how productive their ewes are. So they're actually utilising some of that new technology stuff that's out there and applying it to where they've perceived there to be some bigger gains to be made within their business, and that's where I'm talking about looking at your own business, working out what your main profit drivers are and how you could exploit them. So with these guys, they've actually worked out the number of lambs that you dropped and then applied that to get the, with your weight gains and get litter weight weaned. So they're trying to increase their fertility, obviously, and lamb survival. So it's enabling them to capture those two different types of measurements. So usage for producers, usage will obviously depend on your individual management needs and your profit drivers, but they can be quite varied, and they can include pedigree information, and that doesn't necessarily mean just for studs. You might be just wanting to look at some sire comparisons within your flock, see how they're travelling. It's going to make it a lot easier for you to be able to do that. Weights and weight gains, trying to track your market, automatically draft off animals based on your market specs is going to be quite good. Interest in the southeast. There was a lot of talk about with the new DEXA machines coming into abattoirs, so you can actually then start getting some of those new eating quality traits being measured and getting some really good feedback on farm too. So they're actually looking at that traceability within abattoirs and feedback based on all of this. Vaccine, parasite history and management. Biosecurity is a bit of a hot topic at the minute. So it's going to enable you to record that and measure that a little bit better as well. And along with your supplement history. So, you know, you've got the ability to be able to provide some pretty specific information on animals sold and also how they're managed on farm. Fertility, including pregnancy scanning data. We're seeing a lot more people collect this information. I'm not 100% sure they're all using it, but they're starting to collect it. So at the back of the room, I've got a panel reader and a scale head that we use when we're out pregnancy scanning, and unfortunately most of our other gear is all out being used, so I don't have a lot for display today. But they'll collect that as they go, and clients are then using that to identify those more productive ewes within their flock. And if you have a think about it, if you look at the best ewe on your place, she's probably looking nice, big, healthy, but she's possibly never reared a lamb. So by having some of that information available, you're also going to make sure that you're not culling your most productive animals, because a ewe that's bred twin on twin is possibly going to need a little bit more help to get back up to condition score. So there's lots of different ways you can use this information on your farm to help you with those decisions. Fleece measurements, obviously micron and fleece weights. Micron, we're seeing at the minute, it's a pretty stable business for us. It's not like a growth thing. It's mainly the main clients that are really focusing on their wool production measuring micron, and obviously our sheep studs. But fleece weights has been a big one. It's a major profit driver, and we're seeing a lot more people wanting to measure that and looking at ways to track those animals that are producing those better cuts. So I'm sure you could think of lots of different other things you could apply it for and measure on farm, and that's just some examples. But it's going to give you the ability to make those decisions based on those individual traits and tailor them to your systems accordingly. So lots of different things out on the market now. Have lots of different brands with the All Flex, Leader, Shearwell, Elise, Gallagher, and you've got your few other companies coming into that space as well. When we have been working with the sheep CRC in this space for quite a while now, so well over 10 years. The equipment that we first started with compared to what we're using now has just advanced phenomenally. I have a lot of people that hesitate to buy their own gear because they say it's going to outdate. But if you actually think about what you're trying to achieve and what you want that equipment to do, if you're buying it for a purpose and it achieves that purpose and works for you, then that's what you base your decision on. If you always hang back waiting for something new and better, you tend to just not move forward, don't you? All of the equipment has been made farmer friendly. The way I check how farmer friendly it is I get my husband to use it, and if he uses it, everyone can use it. And if anyone's worked with Paul, they would understand that. So all of the gear now has been made so that farmers don't have to have a great computer literacy to be able to work it. The new wands with the keypads, and I've only got the Gallagher there, but the True Tests, the new wand they have with the keypad, much easier to use. You can actually do your data entry with those as you go, and it makes life a whole lot easier for usage on farm. Downloading and uploading information, they all now have apps on your phone, so you can just take it off on the day. So the equipment that's there is quite robust. It seems to work well, and all companies have recognised they need to have support on the ground, which has been really good, because I think that has been lacking a bit in the past. Scales and automated drafting systems. So once again, there's quite a few, and it just is going to depend on what you're looking to achieve on your farm to what's best for you. I mean, the plain auto drafts, pricing wise compared to the full ClipX system, there's quite significant. I think you can start from around, for the Prattleys, the base models are around about the 12,000, and you go up to a ClipX, and like the top U-Butte systems probably around the 25 to 30. So you need to actually make sure you're working out what you're trying to achieve on farm first, make some decisions before you actually go looking at what to buy, and make sure it's applicable for your business. I won't show you auto drafting video, but obviously auto drafting just makes life so much easier. You can just pop them through. I've had clients that used to collect all that wool testing information, that I'd give them a report back, they'd have a nice big book, they'd be going through 3,000 sheep, would take them 3 days, they'd have so many tag reading errors trying to match up all their data, like they had jackaroos in the system, and so you can imagine they probably didn't really care about reading the tags properly. So lots of errors, quite tedious job, take quite a lot of workmen to try and keep the sheep through. Went to an auto draft within their system, and they were putting through 600 sheep an hour automatically with just one man and a good dog. So huge savings that way. Pedigree matchmaker. So just that ability to associate the electronic tag from the ewe to the lamb, and it just uses an algorithm to how many times they go past a panel reader like the one I've got at the back, how many times that ewe has followed that lamb through to give you an accuracy reading based on, to give you that maternal pedigree information. So we had a few using these, but a lot of people find them quite tedious. You could really only use small mobs with them to get quite accurate readings. So a lot have been very excited about the new Smart Shepherd system that's come in, where they're just using an electronic tag to do the same thing. So exactly the same principles, it's just how many times that lamb is associated with that ewe, and then you just download that information and it will give you the same accuracy type readings. So there's quite a few studs looking at trialling this, and interesting, day before, down at Narracott, there's quite a few commercial producers that were thinking that this might be a way for them to go to try and track some bloodline performance. So lots of new things moving and rapidly developing in that space, I think, in the industry. Genotyping and parentage testing. So we do have a lot of the studs going down that path as well now as that price has come down. So just, DNA testing, basically, taking blood samples and sending them off to do parentage instead. And they're also able to gain some quite other valuable information, and as they go and as that database builds up, we will start to see some more come through there as well. Data management, I think, is always the tricky one, because you need to be able to use that data. So data management can be as simple as you want it to be, or as complex as you want it to be, depending what you're trying to achieve. So no data is worth collecting if you're not going to use it in some way to influence your enterprise. Our business is based on data collecting. We do the pregnancy scanning, wool testing, eye muscling, the visual sheep classing, collecting lots of information for people. Very happy for you to use our services. But I'm sure that well over 50% would hardly use most of the information we collect. So would really like to see people really think about how they're using that information, how it can make you money on farm and improve your livestock business. Always save a copy of your file before opening and editing is a good tip, because the most common source of data corruption is you. I think people get panicky about using any of this equipment because they're going to lose all their information, and have so many people that still manually record as well as do the electronic way, just in case they lose stuff. But as long as you've got a system in place to save that information before you start playing around with it, you won't go wrong. Very hard to delete everything from something. We always keep backups of everything, so there's always a way to retrieve information if you do lose it. There's lots of data support systems and software out there for you to use. Cool Collect and Cool Perform from Sapien. Stockbook, you've got AgriWeb. They've, I believe, moved in, they were a mob-based software, but I believe they moved into the individual animal management space now. Breed Elite, which is Greg Johnson from Kangaroo Island, has developed a system with his son, and they've got also an auto draft system they sell as well. And there's always good old Excel, which I use quite extensively, that will do a lot of the basic stuff for you without having to go down the path of a software program. If you're collecting full pedigrees and a lot of information, and you want to be able to recall and use that easily, then I can't recommend software programs more than enough. And the people that are using them find them invaluable. But if you're not needing to collect a great stack and you can manage it quite well, you can do a lot of it within Excel. The Scaleheads, Gallagher, True Test, and there's a few others out there as well. They've actually got some quite good systems in there as well that there's often will do if you're just looking to track weight gains and just need it to recall information, can actually do that really well for you as well. So I'm only just going to whip through what you can do in Excel, because that's a whole thing on its own really. But you can use it. This is just some fleece data that we've collated. So we've got all the fleece testing, the microns, comfort factors, you've got body weight, greasy fleece weights, and then we've applied a dual purpose index to that to give them a value to work off. And you can then sort that by clicking on the little arrows at the top. So in a table format, those arrows will allow you to sort by that heading. So you can sort by micron, sort by fleece weight, sort by body weight. So you can do some quite easy stuff within Excel. You can then get more in depth and apply filters to start selecting for cross traits. So there's some things you can do in Excel when you're not looking to do a great deal that will do it quite well and quite easily for you. Other useful functions that I use are the VLOOKUP, so that's when you're trying to match your data together, so your body weights and fleece weights together, to automatically do that for you instead of having to manually try and match them up. And yeah, find, replace, left, mid, right, and always, if in doubt, Google it. I've learnt a lot off Google trying to work out what I'm doing wrong sometimes. But yes, don't discount just getting started by using Excel. It can be a great way to get yourself into the space and comfortable using the information before you go down the path of full software programs. Apps for agriculture, we're actually seeing a lot more of those too. Some of the ones that are out there now that I've seen a lot of people use are the Ram Select app, which is the one where you can put your ram team in with ASBVs and then track your sales and what your average ASBV ram team is across years. Ask Bill, which was developed by Sheep CRC, which is more of an animal welfare type program. So that's tracking, you put your property information in there and it will tell you information on when they think there's an event happening. So if you're not going to meet nutrition targets, if you've got fly strike issues that might happen. And they're looking to integrate a lot more within that. So it's probably one to keep an eye out for. I think it'll be, as that develops, will actually be quite useful. Cool Scan, which is a pregnancy scanning app to record your data in. You've got lifetime ewe management ones, you've got lambing planners, and there's a lot more coming within that space too, and a lot more out there that I probably don't know about. I'm just going to touch quickly on some common mistakes that I see with electronic tags. I've pinched this from Robert Wild from Sapien because I figured he's told it really well. I don't need to make it up in my own words. So 5 common things that he's found, which are very much what we see as well, is not having a clear goal, just collecting data for the sake of collecting data. Know what you want to achieve, what you want to improve, and you also need to know how you're going to know when you're there. So yes, it's one good thing to say, I want to get better, but how are you going to know that you have got better if you haven't actually set some targets? So not seeking good advice, do your homework, ask specialists, early adopters, product manufacturers. My big one with that is just make sure you've got good support. So whatever equipment you're buying, make sure that there's a rep or you've got contacts that can help you when you get into trouble, because generally you're using a lot of things only once or twice a year and you tend to forget sometimes. So you need some help just to make sure, especially those first couple of years when you're using things, that you have got some support systems in place. Buying the wrong equipment, understand what you're trying to achieve and what's needed to achieve it. I've had quite a few clients this year that have gone, oh, I've just gone and put electronic tags in all my sheep. Now what do you think I should do with them? I'm going, okay. So have a really clear understanding of what you're doing and what's going to work for you. There's lots of fancy equipment out there. You might not need fancy to get started. You can actually start quite simply to get into it and then try and build what you're trying to achieve, and from there. Not using the data. Data collected is an investment that's not realised until a meaningful decision is made based upon the data. I think that's so true. So especially in dry times like we're experiencing now, when you're looking to destock, just knowing what are your better animals compared to your worse animals. You want to make sure that if you're maintaining a core flock, they are a core flock of your best animals. So having that data there and using it, it's the perfect time. Missed opportunities, forget or don't know how to use the data collected. And that's with making sure you've got support systems. Have some people to help you, back you up with what you're doing, so help you use that information. So many successful clients have saved or made 10 times their investment on ERD just by being better equipped to make intelligent and confident decisions. And that's basically all it's doing, is just a means of you being able to use your information more readily and easily. It's going to be a little bit more reliable, well, it should be a whole lot more reliable, you would hope, than if you were manually trying to do things. So just in conclusion, electronic identification assists with individual animal management. You don't actually have to have electronic tags to apply the principles of individual animal management. It just makes the process easier. There's rapid advancements within the industry, and adoption of new technologies and better usage of existing ones are creating opportunities. And with that, I need really stress, don't be scared to jump in thinking that all this new stuff's going to come out and it's going to be so much better. There'll always be something new and better. But if it's actually achieving what you want it to achieve, it'll still be a good investment. There's a potential for the technologies to develop further. And the good thing with that is we're actually, because farmers are getting involved more with ERD, we're actually buying the products. All those companies are now seeing that come through their bottom lines, and so they're investing more. So they're actually spending a bit more time hearing what you want and improving their products and putting it out there. So all the scale heads, wands, everything's software based. So any updates to any of the software is all just done automatically online. So when you buy a scale head and they have improvements within the software within that, you just hook it up to the internet and it's just a download. So you're not actually going to get left behind with most of that. And finally, it's not the collection of data which results in financial benefits, it's the applied usage of this data. So yes, we make it easy for you to collect it, but it's how you use it that's going to make you the money. So, thank you.